Welcome and hello from Alex, with a story from r/MaliciousCompliance, where a father's vague instruction leads his mischievous son to dig a hole so deep, even he couldn't foresee the consequences. Coming up next is a story from Barjack 521. Dig until you tell me to stop. Sure thing, Dad. Obligatory posting on mobile, so formatting blah blah blah. So now the story. This happened back when the Earth was young and MTV still played music videos in the ancient age known as 1997. I was 13 and spending yet another weekend helping my dad with yard work and home improvement projects. Not complaining. I learned a lot about home repair, and rather than get a shitty teen job in retail, my dad paid me to assist him up until I left for college. Now, just because I didn't hate it doesn't mean I was a little 13-year-old shit, however. On this day, we were putting up a trellis in the garden for plants to grow up. Simple job: sink 2 posts, cement them in place, and fit the trellis between them. My dad gave me a post hole digger, which, if you're not familiar with, looks like someone glued chopsticks to a pistachio shell so you could open and close it with a hinge. He showed me the spot for the first post and said, dig it as deep as you can. So I went and made a foot-deep hole, thinking that was enough to sink the 6 feet posts we had. He comes back and tells me not to be lazy and dig deeper. In fact, keep digging until I tell you it's deep enough. So that's where my malicious compliance came in. I knew he would be back from the garage in about half an hour, so I went to town on this hole. I didn't stop for a break and just kept digging until the post hole digger fit in the hole completely and I couldn't open it to lift dirt out. At that point, I taped a spade to a branch and made the hole even deeper. When he came back, he said something along the lines of, let's see if you did it properly this time, and he drops the 6 feet post into the hole where it promptly disappears. There was a momentary look of shock on his face, then he started laughing, like bent over, can't catch your breath laughing. To this day, I have never seen the man laugh as hard as that. When he was done, he told me that I guess I did what he told me, but now I would have to figure out how to fish the post out of the hole. Luckily, it was only a foot or so below the surface and we got it out easily enough. To this day, my dad still tells this story as a warning about giving vague instructions. Wow, that's a pretty epic display of malicious compliance from a 13-year-old. Sounds like Opie took dig until I tell you to stop a little too literally. Can't say I wouldn't have done the same thing at that age. Teenage rebellion and all that. But turning a post hole digger into a makeshift shovel with a branch, that's some next level ingenuity. In the end, it seems like it all worked out. Dad got a good laugh, and hopefully learned a lesson about clear instructions, and the post probably ended up even more secure thanks to Opie's overzealous digging. Definitely a story worth telling, especially as a cautionary tale for dads everywhere. Coming up next is a story from Additional Guitar 85. If you're living in my house, you'll follow my rules. My male hair got quite long when I was in my senior year of high school, in a pearl-clutching southern town. This got me a fair amount of flack, but the worst was from my dad. He'd always been kind of a tyrant, and his anger was unbearable in my later teens, so I avoided him as much as possible around the house. One day he decided he'd had enough of my long hair, so he walked behind me with scissors and snicked them menacingly. I jumped up and snapped at him, and he shouted back something to the effect of, if you're living under my roof, you'll follow my rules. So the next day while he was at work, I moved out. I didn't even say bye. Living in my own apartment while in high school was fun and had some perks. When I skipped class, the school would call my apartment to tell me, your child was not at school today, lol. Wow, that's an intense story. Sounds like things got pretty heated between Opie and his dad over some long hair. Can't say I blame Opie entirely. Scissors-wielding ultimatums. No wonder he wanted some space. Moving out in high school is a bold move. Risky, sure, but also kind of awesome. Living on your own at that age definitely fosters independence, even if it comes with some side effects like concerned school calls. Still, good on Opie for standing his ground, even if it meant a slightly unconventional living situation. Wonder how his dad reacted when he found out. Coming up next is a story from VRTGO1, and if you like the video so far, don't forget to like the video. It only takes a second and helps me out a lot. Put me on the alarm notification list, but don't give me any guidelines. Good luck. My employer was a medium-sized business, approximately 50 employees at the time, and I happened to live right across the street, about 3/4 mile from our office. Shortly after I started working there, they asked me if I would mind being listed as a contact for the burglar alarm since all of the facilities' admin people lived pretty far away and I was right across the street. They said anytime the burglar alarm goes off, someone has to drive over to meet the police. Don't ask me why. I don't really understand the policy. At the time, I was a young, naive, recent college grad and figured I would try to be helpful and told them I didn't mind. Our internal company policy was if you accidentally set the alarm off, you immediately call the people on the alarm company's list in order so they know it's a false alarm and they can tell the alarm company to ignore it. At the outset, this worked pretty well. I'd get a few false alarm calls a year, but I'd always get an apologetic call from the employee that set the alarm off, so I would just tell the alarm company to ignore it. Then the company started growing and we started having more and more false alarms as we had new employees that would forget about the alarm. And then we started having employees that would ignore the policy and would just leave after setting the alarm off without notifying anybody. After I got wise to this, I started telling the alarm company to ignore everything even if I didn't get a call, because we started getting charged false alarm fees and I figured there was a 99% chance it was a false alarm. I figured we shouldn't waste the time of the police or waste company money paying false alarm fees. I brought this up in a meeting with our crew and they shit a brick and insisted that we couldn't ignore alarm events because what if someone really did break in and somebody was working late? They could be at risk. So I said, okay, staff need refresher training because they aren't following the policy to notify me of false alarms. So we're going to have a ton of police dispatches for false alarm events. Q minimizes the issue and insists the current policy is fine and no retraining is necessary, so Q malicious compliance. Anytime I got an alarm call without someone notifying me of a false alarm, I followed the policy and had them send the police. There were 2 or 3 false alarm calls where the police showed up, found nothing, and sent us a bill. The very next call, I sent the police like the policy said, and right as they were pulling up, they saw a vehicle pulling out of the parking lot and chased it. The employee that got chased, yeah, it was the CEO. In addition to getting chased, he ended up getting cited for speeding as well. The next day, Q tries to pin this on me like it's somehow my fault, to which I reply I just followed the policy you gave me. The next day, the entire company went through refresher training on alarm procedures and I was taken off the alarm call list. I count it as a win. That's a hilarious story. Opie definitely played the company policy like a fiddle. Can't say I wouldn't have done the same thing after getting burned by inconsiderate coworkers and a dismissive coup. Following a policy to the letter when it's clearly broken is a surefire way to get things fixed, even if it means a police chase and a speeding ticket for the CEO. Who knew a little malicious compliance could lead to such a satisfying outcome? Sounds like Opie got some well-deserved peace and quiet, and hopefully a new, more responsible alarm point of contact. Coming up next is a story from Normal Fishing 9824. Go fish. I work in a medium-sized tech company. It securely periodically sends out fake phishing emails, and if you click the links you get enrolled in phishing awareness courses. All of this is quite sensible. However, it also sends round emails which are very fishy. They'll come from an odd sender, trying to instill a sense of urgency, often asking you to do some odd thing with your computer, install this software and ignore the warning. Click on the link to this external site. Here's the malicious compliance. I am pretty sure when it is in an email, but as it's asking me to do things that are warned against in the phishing training, I'll always report as suspicions. I have a feeling it's not just me. Now anytime it sends such an email, they prior warn us in Slack, highlighting it's a real email and asking us not to report. That's a clever way to handle those tricky at phishing simulations. Opie. It sounds like the company's training program might be a little too effective, creating emails so realistic they trigger real reports. But hey, better safe than sorry, right? Reporting every suspicious email, even from it, definitely puts the ball in their court. Forcing them to pre-announce legitimate emails on Slack helps everyone out, keeps employees vigilant, and saves it from unnecessary headaches. Win-win situation. Maybe Opie, and whoever else is doing the same, unwittingly highlighted a gap in the training program. Hopefully, it will adjust their tactics to create more realistic simulations that don't get flagged as real phishing attempts. Coming up next is a story from Smeghead9916. You want me to drop a refrigerator on your face? This is an incident where I refused to maliciously comply because it would have resulted in someone getting hurt, and was then proven right. Sorry if this isn't allowed. I work in the distribution center for an electrical appliance brand. I am a forklift operator. We use fork trucks to transport smaller appliances on pallets, such as microwaves and vacuum cleaners, but we use counterbalance trucks with clamp attachments for transporting large appliances, such as washing machines and fridges. Our fridges can be packaged two different ways. Sometimes they are in boxes, and sometimes there is just plastic over the polystyrene. The plastic package fridges are slippery and can sometimes slip from the clamps, while the boxed fridges don't slip easily because there is more friction. This is important to the story. This morning, I was tipping a container full of fridges. They were all plastic packaged to fit as much as possible on the container. The loaders put fridges lying on their side on top of fridges that are standing upright. These top fridges can be fiddly to take out, and once out they are placed on what I call the flipper, which is a pile of pallets stuck together with a flat board stuck on top. We use the edge to rotate the fridge upright. As I was taking one of these top fridges out, it slipped within the clamp. I still had a hold of it, but it was now at an angle with the top pointing towards the ground, and now almost impossible to put down without damaging it. We don't get in trouble for damages. Management accepts that stuff gets damaged sometimes. Also, most damages are just to the packaging, so they just need to be repackaged. However, we try to save something if we can. This was not one of the times where this would be likely. One of my coworkers still wanted to save it and was standing behind the flipper ready to grab it. He told me to open my clamps slightly and let it fall slowly. This only works with boxed fridges. There is no friction to stop or slow down a plastic-wrapped fridge, even with the tiniest amount of slack. Where he was standing, he was in danger of being hit by the fridge, and I told him so. The other guys chimed in and told me to let it go, and I refused until he moved away, which he finally did. As predicted, I opened my clamps the tiniest amount and it dropped fast, with the back end bouncing upwards right to where his face would have been. Had I maliciously complied, he might have ended up with a broken nose or jaw. Told you, I said. Despite the drop, there was minimal damage, just a small crack in the polystyrene. Wow, that was a close call. Good on Opie for refusing to follow a potentially dangerous order. It sounds like some coworkers were caught up in the save the fridge mentality and lost sight of safety. Opie absolutely made the right call. A damaged fridge can be replaced, a broken jaw, not so much. Taking a stand and explaining the risks until the situation was safe is a great example of putting safety first. And hey, the damage turned out minimal anyway. Double win for Opie, avoided a potential injury and saved the company some hassle with a broken appliance. That wraps up r/MaliciousCompliance. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to visit my Spotify channel. Link is in the description, so you can listen to the best Reddit story while being outside, and remember to hit that subscribe button.